All right, I have finger guns that says that I believe we're online. So once everyone can confirm that they can hear and see me, we will get started. I always love this first moment of waiting to make sure we didn't run into any technical challenges. So please let me know if you can hear me. I see hello everyone. All cool. Okay, it seems like we're good. Hello, everybody. Welcome to Jagged Alliance 3's dev stream number 3. Today we are talking about combat, and I am joined by my wonderful friend Buyan. How are you doing today, Buyan?
Well, kind of hungry, but hopefully we'll talk about such interesting topics today that I'm gonna forget about eating.
Yeah, it's getting close to dinner time over there, I imagine, right?
Yeah.
It's I'm gonna apologize to everyone on the stream beforehand. I am at the tail end of a slight cold, so if I sound a little congested, that's absolutely why. I'm still kind of navigating the after effects. I feel back to normal, but definitely still having a little bit of the effects of that. It's going to be an exciting stream today. We have a lot to go through. Buyan's going to be my guest for the whole time. I know in the last couple streams, I think combat has come up more than any other topic, right? Like this has been the thing that we always talk about. So today we're dedicating the entire stream to talking about combat. We're going to be showing some live gameplay. We're going to be doing a number of topics from the dev diary. We got a lot to show, but I have a really cool thing to show to start. I'm not sure if everyone saw this announcement. I'm sure most of you did. We did announce and show that we're releasing a collector's edition for Jagged Alliance 3, and the guys over the marketing team made a cool little quick a trailer show highlighting the collector's edition. So I think we're gonna go ahead and it just came out, like it just was done like a couple hours ago, so it's relatively hot off the presses. We're gonna go ahead and show the collector's edition trailer here before we get into the combat topic, and just get everyone a chance to see kind of what we're working with. So if Simon's ready, we're gonna have our tactical edition trailer played, and hope you guys enjoy. We'll get that started right now. All right, we're back. I'm super excited about the collector's edition, or the tactical edition. I gotta use the right words. Tactical edition is what we're calling it. It was a fun exercise in kind of picking out all the different things that we could put in there. I saw someone already asking about the soundtrack. So the tactical edition comes with an actual disc that has a specific choice of tracks that we collaborated on with the composer to put on there. But we are planning, this is the plan right now, I'm not going to say it's 100%, we are planning to have the full soundtrack available as well digitally. But for the awesome collector's disc, you'll get a small option for those who still have CD players, which I guess there's still a few people out there. And we have the cool case, the pouch, the physical version of the game, the belt. It's a neat collection of things to put on your shelf. I'm actually really excited about getting mine. So, what do you think about it, Buyan? Now that you had a chance to look at it.
I love it, and I specifically love how nostalgic it makes me feel about these good old collector's editions. The big box and all of the physical stuff there, the cards for all of the mercs, those with each individual cool quote for each merc. That's really gonna be awesome, and also the box itself, it's really nice looking and actually useful. So
Yeah, it was
amazing.
we actually, when we were coming up with the concept of this thing, we drew inspiration from some of the in-game elements that we created with the in-game kind of case that you have for your inventory and character UI. So there's a little bit of tie-ins there when it comes to what we did on the game side that I think is pretty neat.
Yeah.
So what will happen if you have a game CD with a CD drive? Oh yeah, the technical edition comes with the digital code as well. By the way, you aren't forced to use a DVD drive to install the game. So absolutely, that's not a that's
Yeah,
funny.
find your old
Yeah,
PC that you.
we're not going that retro. Hey, by the way, if you decide to buy the cool fancy tactical edition, you better have a drive in your PC. That's the only way you can play it. No, don't worry. You can still download it on Steam. So yeah, keep an eye out for more information on that and links on when it actually goes up. I don't think I haven't gotten word on exactly when that's going to be happening, but it's super exciting and we're glad to see people are responding positively about that. Yeah, I had disk drives in my machine for longer than most, but the last two rigs, I just was like, I would love to say that I still burn CDs every once in a while, but who does, right? It's all Spotify and Pandora and streaming services, so
Haven't had a DVD player for probably 2 or 3 machines already. So long time since I was able to actually play a physical.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, let's get into the topic of choice today. And if you haven't read it, and I think it's actually or it was on the screen a little while ago, we have the our Dev Diaries post. You can get more information and the about the game and read all the different dev diaries and interact. The Combat 1 dev diary that we posted earlier this week, that had like 2+ pages of comments pretty much right away. So there was a lot of conversation going on very quickly on this combat topic. I think people are kind of interested in it.
Oh, definitely, it's the core of what makes Jagged Alliance so special. It's one of the seminal tactical games of all time, so it's natural to all of the fans to wonder what we've made with Jagged Alliance 3 and how it works and how close it is to the original.
Oh, look at Home on the quick posting the link there. Thank you so much, Home. Yeah, I think now, and this is what we talked about right in the very beginning. Combat is one of our core pillars. It's something that was really important to us. Well, I love how all of a sudden chat has devolved into talking about disk drives and 3.inch floppy drives. It's wonderful. I still remember my 3.5-inch floppy drives for was it Doom 2, I think, that came with 6 of those things. And I remember back then installing it, I'm like, 6 3.5 drive. How big can a game be to need 6 discs? How things just...
I don't know if you've pirated any games of way back then, but when we had
No, of course not. No,
games
never.
then, when the middle diskette or the middle CD got damaged, it was how to go back and actually try to reapply the on another disk, burn another DVD or on another disk drive, and get it back and try to restore the archive, and it was fun times.
Yeah, it was fun times. All right. Anyways, I'll stop being distracted by chats. Walk down memory lane. But we'll yeah. So the let's first talk about, I think, what is important to us when it comes to Jagged Alliance feel. Like what's critical to us in that.
Oh, ultimately we've talked about
Combat. Sorry.
So the combat is like if the characters are like the heart and soul, the spice of I think the core combat is like the main course of the game. It's what gives you interesting choices, meaningful challenges, and that makes them very gritty to play.
I really liked the way he talked about, one of the feelings we wanted, aside from like the simulation style of combat, which is super important to us, is that a little more precise control over each character's actions and how they move and attack and engage in a space.
Yes, and that's where our action point system comes in. It allows the characters to fine tune all of their actions. So each character has a number of action points, usually between 10 and 12 for rookie mercenaries. They can go up. You can lose action points because of, for example, low morale. But ultimately, it allows you to fine tune how long of a distance do you want to travel. When you go and try to take a shot, do you want to aim, spend more action points on making sure that this attack is gonna come in? Do you want to take a more defensive position? So use the stance mechanics to spend some action points to take cover from ranged attacks. So it allows this level of fine tuning and really gives a very wide array of choices to go through and to consider when you're analyzing the tactical situation.
Yeah, the action point system was, I think, it was especially when it comes to the original Jagged Alliance. It was something that was a relatively cool innovation back then.
Yes, of course. Well, both XCOM and Jagged Alliance used the action point system. It was very interesting of how they both approached this mechanics. Ultimately, I think I enjoyed Jagged Alliance a lot more because of exactly this finer level of detail. And basically, XCOM was a bit probably
Chunky.
more randomized, annoyingly random, I would say. Everybody remembers like getting off the ship and getting your first
Absolutely.
soldier shot instantly by 4 or 5 aliens, and that kind of didn't. I didn't have a good variety of choices when a mission started in XCOM. While Jagged Alliance always feels like it gives you this kind of choice and how to approach a situation. Make sure you use your the arsenal of your mercenaries, what they can do as abilities to make sure that you are approaching the situation properly.
Yeah, I definitely agree, and I think there was a granularity, like we talked about in the dev diary, like the action points we're talking about. Beginning characters have 10 to 12 action points, and that actually can range up based on skills and XP level and other kind of perks. So we're talking a range of points where you actually can distribute them to do different things per turn. And I always felt the XCOM action system was a little chunkier. Like you could do a couple things, but you weren't getting that kind of extra layer of decision making when it comes to the precision and the
Yeah.
do you run and then shoot and then go undercover, or do you shoot 3 times, or like don't get me wrong, I love XCOM, and I played XCOM 2 specifically quite a bit as a modern version, and really have a lot of great things to say about it. But I think that there's a difference in the way that Jagged Alliance feels and the way that action points allow you to control your characters in the scene that is unique to the franchise, and something that I feel like we've captured. And from watching people, and I know some of you saw the previews that happened recently with some of the streamers and influencers, watching people play it, I think that the way they're approaching combat reflects that. So I think that's kind of nice.
Yes, and again, the wide array of choices is really what we were after. That each choice felt like meaningful, and when you analyze the situation, you could come up with a different solution different times. So maybe if you're threatened by an enemy that's like a grenadier, you try to go down to the prone stance and to get defensive bonus against explosives when he throws a grenade, and also utilize more of your action points to then just aim at a specific body part and make sure that status effect lands on that turn.
Yeah. So, one last comment on action points before we move on to our next topic. Another thing to be aware of is that both sides of the combat equation have the action points factor involved. So all enemies, everything that you interact with, even you're also all navigating action points as part of how they're making their decisions too. So it's both sides of the equation.
Yeah, definitely, and actually, some systems take advantage of using this action point system. So if there's a morale system, the morale system can lower the number of action points the enemies have, and they will actually shoot less or be less accurate, depending if they want to spend their action points the AI wants you to aim, or try to do a few quick snapshots.
Yeah, absolutely. So, we're gonna pull some gameplay camera up while we and we have Pavel. Everyone remembers Pavel from previous streams. Pavel is actually going to be doing some gameplay examples of some of the stuff we're talking about here in the next section. So you'll get to see a little bit of live. It's not going to be like actually live playing the game, but we're going to demonstrate a few of these topics as we actually go through them. And the next thing we want to talk about is stances. So stances is another thing that's really important to Jagged Alliance, and it really is a critical element of how players or how characters move through the environment, how they set themselves up for shots, how they... I think stances is actually, in my opinion, one of the more defensive elements of combat, because it really can determine how you put yourself in a safer position when you get into certain circumstances. So, I mean, stances are a big aspect of how you navigate your combat spaces.
Yes, it's really related to how you analyze the tactical situation, and defines how you want to approach different spaces. So, for example, in the modern XCOM type of games, you usually only try to judge cover. There's cover. Well, the space in Jagged Alliance is available to you because you can use the stances like crouching and going prone to get a defensive bonus. And this really opens up the entire space for experimentation and trying to use different approaches.
Yeah.
The crouch stance gives you some defense against ranged attacks, while the prone stance gives you even more. However, you get to be more vulnerable to melee attacks, so you have to see if there are enemies that are gonna attack you in melee. If they catch you in the prone stance, you're gonna have a tough time. But there are also other bonuses. For example, as I said, if you're prone, you get some damage resistance to explosive. It's not gonna save you, but it might be enough to keep you alive for another turn and get another shot. So it's important, and this opening up the entire space to use is very key in this aspect.
Yeah, I think right now we have Pavel, and thank you for your keen Vanna White demonstration by pointing out some of the difference. If you look at the screen right now, and you can see on the lower part, he's kind of going through the different stances. It's a relatively cheap action, so usually it just takes an AP or so to change your stance. Obviously, if you're going from standing all the way to prone, it takes a little bit more. And I think in this situation, Barry is right behind a cover object, and if he goes into his stance, it completely changes his hit profile. This actually goes into something we're going to talk about a little bit later, even when it comes to like which body parts you can hit. So I know I often it's one of those things where like if you have extra AP, what do you do with it? And sometimes it's not about moving, it's actually about changing your stance in order to completely adjust how visible you are. Like if you were to crouch behind those boxes, you're almost impossible to hit, and that can be very, very valuable as a defensive move. So let's move on really quick to talk about the prone stance. I think we have another character over there on the left on top of a building. And prone is another thing that has multiple elements too, because in the prone stance, obviously prone makes you hard to hit, and you were talking before, yeah, you can go ahead and go prone. You're talking before about how it also makes you more vulnerable to certain types of attacks, like the melee attacks and whatnot. But with this particular character, and I know we didn't talk about this in prep, but let's go ahead and do it. If you open up the weapon mod screen real quick, this character's weapon actually has a mod on it that makes it even more effective when it's prone.
Yeah, so bipods definitely help. That give you benefits when you are using the weapon as prone. And actually, there's a very good build using bipods, and I personally do a bipod with Overwatch mechanic builds that do some very nice damage, and they can hold an entire area closed off to the enemy.
Yeah, I think it's a neat effect where it's we try to make these systems a little more multi-layered. So obviously, the prone and crouch have their different effects when it comes to, defensive or accuracy or whatnot. But then you can actually build towards someone that's designed to get up on a rooftop or get into a long alleyway and use those weapon mods to enhance that combat style, which I think is really fun. It adds a lot of variety in both. And we talked about this last week, even when it comes to perks and how certain mercs are maybe slanted a different direction when it kind of weapons they use, which I think is super neat. And I personally, I think the prone sniper Overwatch approach can be really effective, but it also has some limitations too because, like we were talking about, there's the environments are full of cover objects and different things, and you have to try to get those targets to move into a space, and having someone in the back, prone and doing Overwatch also takes that person out of the mobility part of the game. So, there's trade-offs that you're kind of dealing with there for sure.
Yeah, you're gonna be very static in that build, and if you lose line of sight and line of fire, you're gonna have several turns of just moving around and trying to get into a decent position again. So trade-offs.
Yeah, someone was asking a question about how high buildings can go. That's kind of a tricky question because we have different environments that have different levels of verticality. So I don't want to give away too much, but there are buildings that are multi-storied, not just one story. And there are buildings that are multi-storied that also have balconies. And there are also environments like I know, and Booyan, correct me if I'm wrong, there's a couple of them, but there are like some that are like underground mines that have verticality to them, like inner shafts and whatnot that you can go down. So there's definitely some different layers that come into play aside from just buildings when it comes to how verticality comes into play.
Yeah, definitely there are like different floors you can climb, and it's not only just like one floor, second floor. There can be middle levels based on that, so it can vary quite a lot from one location to another. There are some locations which are quite vertical, but those do present a challenge purely to navigate.
I'm gonna YOLO a little bit here. I use the word YOLO to say when I go off script. So here's my script. I'm gonna go off script for a second. This is something we haven't talked about. Maybe it'll come up in combat too, but I think it's appropriate to mention now since people are asking about verticality. Verticality is something, and indoor-outdoor combat is something that we actually spent. It's interesting because I think when you're looking at a game and it's a finished product, it's not always obvious just how hard some of the challenges are to solve. And verticality and indoor-outdoor combat interactions took us quite a while to work on. And if you look at other, and I'm not going to mention by name, there are other games that have in the turn-based strategy space that have indoor-outdoor combat components or verticality components, and there are a lot of things that we looked at and said we don't want to be that. Like that's hard. That's not working the way we want. We want the combat spaces to feel fluid. We want players to be able to digest these things easily. One of the big and we probably, I mean, what, remind me, I think we did like 4 or 5 iterations on this. We had a lot of different control scheme mechanics on how you actually change your level of verticality in an environment because we have multiple tiers and multiple stories that you work with. And I think Pavel is actually showing that right now in game. It was something that we got wrong a lot until we finally found a version that we liked. And I didn't see anyone comment about having problems with it during the preview streams, which I think shows that we got something that does work quite well.
Yeah, that was something that was really hard to nail down because we were constantly trying to merge controls of zooming and using the levels. And ultimately, once we split it, it worked actually much better. And very much. I think actually this shot that Pavel is showing right now is very Jagged Alliance nostalgia for me. I just remember playing Jagged Alliance and getting on top of rooftops to get the vantage point, and I think this is like a crucial element we wanted to get into the game. Going, navigating the space so you can go on top of rooftops, getting the vantage point, and even getting on these slanted roofs was a challenge technically to make sure that everything works correctly.
yeah, for sure. It's a cool one of those little details that when you play you maybe take for granted, but it was a hard set of problems to solve to make all of that feel good. And I think you're right. Like the zooming and changing of vertical level integration was something that we really wanted to work because it would make controls a little bit easier in a sense that there was less things to think about, but it just didn't work. And until we separated them and allowed you to do both, it didn't feel smooth. And now it's like you can move around and look at areas at a certain verticality level and then go up 2 stories or down. And especially with, I think one of my favorite examples of that was the mines level I was talking about. There's one that has this like 3 or 4 stories and you can walk down stairwells and you can shoot, if you're really careful, from the top all the way to the bottom floor. And then just even visualizing that space was almost impossible until we got the control scheme right. So it's super neat. Anyways, enough YOLO distraction. We'll move back to the next topic. So, yeah, sorry. Buyan's used to this. I get excited about things. So the next thing we talked about is firing modes and kind of how those can impact your decision making when it comes to using a weapon. And firing modes is something that has a big impact, even based on a per weapon basis. There's a lot of different things you can do about that. So, um, what are some of the let's kind of talk about firing modes first. What are some of
Yeah.
the things that we think about with firing modes when it comes to
So
how
ultimately, this is part of the grounded in realism aspect of the combat. That's something that the Jagged Alliance series was always great about. It felt like a real firefight between real people in the real world, and getting the weapons right and getting those details about using different fire modes was really important to get this feeling right. So weapons are based on realistic weapons, and they have realistic fire modes, and they give you different options of how to approach a situation. For example, an assault rifle will have the option to you go single shot, burst fire, or full auto. It may depend from one assault rifle to another, but all of those give you different aspects. For example, in most cases, which is the default situation, default firing mode is you're using burst to get more damage because it fires multiple bullets. If all of those bullets hit, they will cause more damage. It comes with a penalty, of course. Not It's not as accurate as a single shot, and that's something that will actually probably show later on. If you want to get a single shot in just to get, for example, a specific status effect, so shooting a guy in the leg so he's less mobile, he won't run away, that's where the choices come in and the play between the different firing modes.
Yeah, and so I want to grab one quick question that came up earlier a couple times before we go directly into the fire mode examples. Yes, there's quite a bit of destruction in the game. It's not just red barrels that you blow up. You can blow up awnings. You can blow holes inside of buildings. You definitely can, and I've done this many times. If enemies are up on top, even inside of a building on a upper floor, there are certain weapons like RPGs that can blow holes in the floor and drop them and cause them to get stunned and take damage. I've been shot off of of an Overwatch position before, so grenades can damage things. I think there's even like certain I'm not going to talk about this too much yet, but there's extra effects that can happen with grenades on certain types of objects aside from just blowing holes in things. So there's quite a bit of destructibility more than just shoot a red barrel or blow up a cover object. It's more deep than that. And there was a decent amount of effort put in to try and even make that make sense based on material types and impulse and damage types and so so I know we have right now. Oh, I think, did the stream just drop off again? Well, 1 second. I want to make sure. Okay, I think we're back. It survived. I don't know why it keeps on doing that. It's super weird. So we have Pablo here showing some gameplay footage, and I think he has a FAMAS on file to first to show some of the kind of assault rifle fire modes first. So why don't you go ahead and like zoom in, and you were talking about like burst fire versus
Single
single.
shot, yeah. And there's also full auto, which is the more like control suppression type shot you're gonna use. It takes up all of your action points until the end of the turn, but based on how many action points you had you used, it will fire different amounts of bullets. So there's like a decision point even there, and fine-tuning with the action points. It's mostly to suppress an area around an enemy. It will actually lower their action points because they're suppressed. It will add a status effect. And of course, more bullets means more chances to hit an enemy or even hit the surrounding area and cause some collateral damage.
Yeah, I'm getting a question from chat that's come up a couple times, and maybe there's a question for Bouillon with an eye to respond to in a text. But everyone's kind of curious why we have a damage reduction on burst fire mode. Do you have any information on why we decided to go that direction? Or is that?
I know it's a common question, so it's a bit deep to go. Ultimately, it's for balance purposes, and I can go into a deeper story about how we were talking. We were designing the bullet simulation, and bullet simulation is something we want to talk about. So, of course, bullets are fully simulated once they leave the
Yeah.
chamber of the gun, and there were many possible approaches to take with automatic weapons because it's very easy to do the gameplay around single fire weapons, but auto fire weapons always cause a problem. Having a lot of bullets at the same time can cause drastic effects. So ultimately, we tried several systems in a row. We tried a system that simulated every bullet. We tried a system where the first shot was accurate and there was a special recoil system that every subsequent shot
That.
would move. The gun would actually physically move, and the recoil based on the recoil, and that meant different trajectories for each of the bullets. The problem was that ultimately that was way too much chaos and resulted in very unpleasant gameplay effects. It was either shooting like Wile E. Coyote, almost like a cartoon, every bullet missing around the silhouette of the enemy, so you could even see like a bullet holes, but nothing hit the enemy, because when you are firing at long ranges with automatic weapons, it definitely very hard to hit. On the opposite end, the most dominant strategy was just running up to anyone just in point blank range and using the full auto to get 15 shots and all of them connected, because there's the spread can go that far when you're at limited range, and
Yeah.
it really meant that was the best way to play, and that's not a good fun gameplay. So
It was.
ultimately there was this balancing act of what felt good gameplay wise and what gives the best choices, and the situation is always there's always a good couple of good choices in the situation, and there's not an obviously bad way to play.
Yeah, there was a period of time for a while, actually. I think as we were experimenting with some of these systems, I think it was like 6 or 8 months where it was actually a major problem, even though there were different weapons in the game and they had different benefits that were perceived. I remember many builds where if you actually let yourself play as a real player and not as a developer, you just pick rifles and burst fire everything to death. Like it was by far the most effective strategy, and
Yeah.
we tried a number of different ways to balance it, but you'd sit there and go, yeah, I could use like assault rifles were more effective than machine or than shotguns in close range, and it just wasn't right. Like there was a different challenges there. So
Yeah. And even the original Jagged Alliance struggled with that. I remember many cases where just walking up to an NPC, the conversation goes bad, and heroes going first and just burst your character instantly down because you're right next to each other, and all of the bullets.
some people are thinking that we made it neutered. I mean, it definitely still is effective. It's not like we took the legs out from under it. It was just trying to make sure that,
No,
you know, and you're not wrong. It doesn't. I mean, it's always tricky in games like this because there's a balance between realism and fun, and you definitely want as much of the simulation aspects we have in there. But you can. It's if the game turns into being an unfun experience for most players, I think there's probably a segment of player bases that really want every single thing to be exactly as real life. Like you get shot in the shoulder and you bleed out right then and there. Like, and that's
Yeah.
it makes sense to have that fantasy, but it's also something that we want to bring a little bit of a balanced game experience. So it's tricky. Um, it's we'll be curious. And by the way, it's not something that necessarily is set in stone in a sense that when it comes to live support and as we kind of see how people play things, maybe there's things that we decide to reevaluate as we go. But as balance has evolved and we try different things, you kind of zoom in on certain types of solutions. So it makes sense there. So let's move on. We talked about the auto rifle or the FAMAS quite a bit. One of my favorite things to do, especially with certain characters, is the shotgun aspect. And by the way, these aren't even all of the fire modes. We're just talking through a couple of them. So we have a character over on the side that Pavel has set up with a shotgun. I think it's Steroid. And there's different types of shotguns, and different types of shotguns even have different types of alt fire modes. This is the one that I like to use myself, just because I think it's satisfying. So with the shotgun, you have like the normal, you have 2 shells in the chamber, and you can shoot one. But there's also that, and I think the camera's back up here in a second. There's the. I'm waiting to see if the gameplay camera comes back up. I'm waiting for Simon to say yes, we returned it before I keep going. But anyways, so on the shotgun side, you have the double barrel shot, which I think is a lot of fun, where you can just sit there, load 2 shells, and then blam, hit someone with 1 shot. And I think that's really fun to do. I get a thumbs up that we have the gameplay back on there. Yeah, the double barrel shot. I think it's just super satisfying. I think we actually showcased it in one of our trailers, partially because I just think it's a really cool effect. And I don't know if, Pavel, you want to go ahead and just shoot this guy. Hopefully it yeah, well, there you go. And usually it's a crit shot too, and you kind of shot the guy in the, I'm gonna just say, in the lower half of the body, so that definitely looks cool. But it's just a satisfying effect, and it's also kind of exposing because you have to do the full reload afterwards. But the shot is a fun thing to do.
Yeah, and actually it's, of course, what you're talking about, different shotguns. I actually, while I love the double barrel shotguns, I like the automatic ones more because you can do a burst with shotguns. And
yeah, true.
That's quite amazing too.
I just love that, especially with the shotguns and melee characters. If you have melee characters charging in and they're coming at you with a knife or whatever, and it's just like, nah, blam. I think it's fun. Yeah. And the last of the shot modes we're going to demonstrate here is the double or the dual wielding, which you can dual wield different weapons. Right now, I think we're just showing dual wielding pistols with Fox. But dual wielding is also a fun thing that changes a couple different factors. Pistols by themselves also just have some cool mechanics, like the run and gun, which is something that I really enjoy with pistols, where you can move and shoot at the same time, which was a neat way to kind of relocate and also do some damage that is an advantage for kind of the lighter weapons. I really like the mobile shot, but we're talking about dual wielding here. So when we go to the pistol here, you can see like well, I'll let Bouillon explain it. What are the different things you can do with dual wielding?
When you're dual wielding, you can actually have different guns in each hand. So you could have a revolver that's longer range or more crit damage, or you can even have an Uzi in one hand. So you can actually do a shot with both, or you can decide to shoot one or the other. And it's again this fine-tuning of action points. If you see an enemy that's low on health, you might want to shoot him with just a single shot from one of the pistols to use less action points. Or if you see an enemy that's on full health, like strong, you might want to do the dual shot and get the extra damage. I guess.
Yeah, it's just a neat way to. Everyone's talking about. I don't know if I've ever tried, or if do we have any dual wielding shot off shotguns? I don't know if we did that. You don't have to answer it. I don't think we did.
No, but that sounds awesome.
Yeah, that does sound. Maybe that's something we add into a post-release list. Dual wielding off shotguns sounds like a thing that we should look into. I like that. Helmet here is asking, can you dual wield melee weapons?
No, melee weapons currently. So that's actually an interesting topic. Melee weapons are a bit more restricted in how you can combine them, because ultimately it requires a lot of animation effort to get a good enough melee combat feeling. And while shooting 2 weapons is much simpler to replicate from our animation standpoints, having like a machete and a knife doesn't requires its own special animations.
Yeah, it's a lot of animation setup.
Yeah. But however, melee is still quite satisfying. I'm doing a playthrough right now with 5 melee mercs in a single squad. Yes, and it's so overpowered. I don't know if I'm not gonna nerf it after the stream.
Really? That sounds very, very interesting.
And melee is something we'll probably talk about more on another Combat Dev Diary number 2, but it's an interesting counter to some playstyles as it bypasses certain things like armor, for example.
Yeah. Well, we talked. Let's go ahead and move on to our last two topics. I want to leave some time here for questions. We talked about bullet simulation a little bit throughout the stream. Is there anything, just to kind of go through that really quick? Is there anything you want to mention to the audience, really, on bullet
Yeah.
simulation as a touch point?
So I think the most important thing is that firearms have different caliber bullets. There are different types of bullets as well, and the power of the caliber determines their penetration powers. So they can penetrate. They can penetrate through objects, walls. They can destroy objects, and they can penetrate between multiple enemies. So you can definitely have a high-powered sniper rifle and go through three enemies like a single bullet doing 3 headshots. I'm not sure anybody's caught it on tape yet, but I think it's quite possible. So that's definitely ways to use the bullet penetration mechanic to your advantage. For example, a character with a high-powered rifle can use another character as a spotter and try to shoot somebody from behind a wall.
Yeah.
You can try to destroy cover, which is actually the shotguns are quite good at destroying cover, which basically opens up enemies for easier attack from other characters, and this really allows for a variety of different tactical approaches. It gives again this level of play around with the location, the level, and the environment to try to find the best way to defeat the enemy.
Yeah, I remember there's this one mission, or this one, not mission, this one sector that has, well, there's a couple of them that are like this, but there's one that I have a very vivid memory of as a combat experience where it was all like shantytown walls, like everything is like thin aluminum or metal or whatever. And yeah, you're using it as cover because it's better than standing in the open, but you get shot through it all the time. And what I like about that is it does a couple of different things to the combat experience. One, you pay attention to what kind of materials you're behind and what kind of materials your enemies are behind, and you may use things like shotguns or grenades or RPGs to blow up that cover. But it also means that you have to be mobile, and it was something that we really wanted to do with the combat experience. We didn't want, in my experience, there's a number of turn-based strategy games, especially ones that have gunplay, where it's not uncommon to kind of slow walk your way forward. Because you can kind of get a firing line and you can kind of sit in those cover object areas and relatively be safe as you kind of deploy your weaponry. And we really were experimenting with a lot of these systems, from materials to melee to run and gun. All of these were designed to, not all the time, but more to add that extra layer in, where mobility and changing your position and making the combat more fluid is part of the experience. It's baked into the way you approach your combat and your tactical situation. So I felt like when we added that feature in and we started having those penetration options, it's like, oh my gosh, I have to decide how long I can stay behind this. I can't just sit here. And I may, if the enemy has a guy with a high penetration gun, this may not be the place to sit, and I can only I have to keep changing. So I find that not just the element of realism and being able to, make those decisions, but it does make the map and your combat space a lot more dynamic. And I personally like that. I think it's a cool aspect of Jagged Alliance's combat feel.
Yeah, and again, to highlight just the variety of approaches.
Sorry, Helmet made a joke. I'm just laughing.
So, just to highlight the variety of choices, I do know what sector you mean. I usually actually go there with, depending on the situation, I usually go with a machine gun carrying guy. I just go prone, set up the thing, and the entire shantytown disappears fast with all of the bullets flying through everywhere.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, just machine all their feet off, right? It's like, I guess you're not walking anymore.
Yeah, it's very interesting to have this variety of playstyles and try different approaches. And that's ultimately my dream, is that people will try and analyze the different locations and try different approaches and compare even how they went about a difficult combat.
Yeah, and it's the challenge of turn-based games. You know, all of us hopefully in chat are fan of these types of games, and it's something that every turn-based developer always has to wrestle with, which is, the games can become repetitive because you kind of figure out how to play them and you figure out how you use your particular weaponry in a particular tactical situation that is relatively widespread, and then there you go. It's like a two or three solution mechanic. And I'm not saying that we got it perfect, and obviously we're gonna, react to how, we get feedback from the fans, but it was a very big focus point for us to add some of that dynamic simulation fantasy kind of like. And I love how Bouillon, this is a good example of this, right? If I can do an all melee run, what does that turn into? Well, that may be overpowered, but the fact that you try it and there's options there and it changes the game flow, I imagine it's a whole different way of playing, and that's its
Oh,
own set.
definitely. It requires a lot more player knowledge to just knowing the game well to make sure that you set up everything correctly. It's
Yeah.
very, it definitely cuts through everything like hot knife through butter, but you have to be able to know which traits to combine, how to position your characters, how to approach different situations, so line of sight breaks and enemies can't shoot you down constantly. So it requires a lot of player knowledge about the game.
Yeah, and Marcus brings up an interesting point. Definitely civilian collateral damage could be had if you decide to go full machine gun pray and spray. That's its own consequences. Which maybe you're doing the ultimate don't care about civilian run. And I saw someone else ask. Let me grab it from the questions. Oh crap! I'm on my wrong computer. Let me grab one of the questions. Someone asked a question about this is on topic here. Can you shoot anybody? Yeah. Wearsby said, will it be possible to shoot anyone anywhere we want, like ground buildings? Not everyone, but in most circumstances, if you want to pull a gun out and end someone's life, you can certainly do it. Like that freedom is there. So to that point, if you want to sit in the middle of anywhere and pull your machine gun out and just start, I wouldn't recommend it, but you can. There's freedom for what you can do for sure.
Yeah, and of course that has consequences. If you go down mowing down civilians, there's people are not gonna like you, and you're gonna have a tougher time just getting help from the locals. And definitely.
Giblik said it's not a war crime if nobody is left alive. I'm not sure. I mean,
No spoilers. No spoilers.
Yeah. And Deuce Love, yeah, I'm glad you're liking this stream. I'm not going to accept payments in the form of diamonds for a closed beta question answer. A lot of those things we have to answer collectively at the right time. So at the moment, we don't have anything to say about potential more open closed betas. I will say that there have been invite-only betas that we've done behind the scenes with different expanded groups of people. I apologize, maybe you weren't able to get involved in that, but there's been a lot of testing and a lot of incremental increases of that testing audience that have been running. So how much more we run and opportunities to get involved with that, there's nothing I can announce about that at this time. So I know we're at the end, almost the end of the stream, and I think we're gonna, if you're okay with it, I'd like to go a little bit longer because I want to get to one topic here. That's okay. Cool. I got thumbs up. So everyone, you're gonna get some bonus minutes out of us. The last topic, and we're talking about this a lot, and we talk about this all the time. We're gonna keep on talking about it. It was the most discussed thing about Jagged Alliance 3 with the previews and the streamers, which is the beloved chance to hit conversation. And it's the last element of combat that we talked about in the dev diary. So I just want to just chat about it for a little bit. Everyone has different opinions, and I think they're all good and valid opinions. And for those who haven't heard what our take is on it and why we decided to go this direction, I think it's worth yet talking about it again and continuing to kind of, I don't want to say educate because that's the wrong way, but just help everyone understand why we took this choice. It wasn't one that we took casually. And sorry, Boyan, I'm gonna riff for a second. When Ian Curry joined the team, it was still relatively early on, mid to late pre-production, and started helping with us. We actually, and if everyone knows who Ian Curry is, he's the creator of the Jagged Alliance franchise. He's the one who made Jagged Alliance 1 and 2. We had a cool video about him. So when he joined, we had chance to hit displays in. The percentages were in. And I remember the first call I had with him after he played the first build, and it was something that he noticed right away. Like it was one of the first things that he mentioned about combat is that it wasn't a accidental choice. It wasn't something based on any kind of limitations of tech or production or anything. It was a purposeful decision to make the game feel more simulative and more immersive. They didn't want you to have a math equation that determined how you made your chance to hit. And it was really important, at least to him, when he looked. And he wasn't saying you should do it this way. He was just giving feedback to say that feeling that seeing that math changed the way that you approach combat in a way that didn't feel like Jagged Alliance as a franchise. And we had already been debating about, okay, how does combat flow? Why is it feeling the way it is? We don't like the way it feels. We need to get this fixed. It feels a little bit like other turn-based games, and it doesn't feel like the way we remember Jagged Alliance as a franchise. And I think we already were discussing a little bit, if I remember correctly, Bouillon, we had conversations about, should we keep this? Should we remove it? And then when Ian's feedback came in, and he's like, this is a big thing that is pulling me out of the Jagged Alliance mentality, it was like, all right, let's try it. Like, and we when we first even added it, it was we're gonna just try this thing. We probably aren't gonna like it. Like, this is a really risky move. It's gonna be contentious. And then we tried it, and the results of when we tried it, all of us, I think, universally were like, wow, this is working way better than we expected it to.
Yeah, ultimately, the hiding some of the information from the player, it makes you play in a different way. It's not longer all about solving the puzzle of how to make the best move here. I have a very good example of what was a very peculiar way to play the game when we had the chance to hit in. We actually showed you while we were moving what the percentage to hit different enemies was, where you would land your move. So ultimately, we had a lot of people in the company playing like a pixel hunting game. Which square is the best square that I will get the best chance to hit, that I can shoot twice, for example.
Yep.
And they were actually not looking at the situation, the whole setup of the encounter, the level, what were the enemies. They were looking at this number, and they were going square by square of the grid and trying to find what's the best numeric position. They also set up their own kind of rules. I will always move if there is at least 70% chance to hit. And basically, we're playing the UI. We are talking a lot about playing the UI when we talk about chance to hit, and that's something that happened quite a lot, and it was a very one-sided way to play. It was never exciting. It was never surprising. It didn't give you any challenge or interesting approaches to use. So when we hit part of the information, which was, of course, something that the original Jagged Alliance did, it really changes your approach to different situations. You start observing things that are actually in the level. What is the position of the enemies? How are they positioned around cover? Where can I move so I can have a safe spot and try to get close enough so that I'm in range? You still have a lot of factors that you can see, which are what factors into your accuracy, like what's my range, am I using automatic fire like the burst mode or single shot. If I'm actually prone with a bipod, I will get an accuracy bonus. So it's better if I move somewhere and go prone and I'm in range. I learn this thing naturally as I go through combat encounters and see the benefits I'm getting to accuracy, and I form a play style. And there's always more to explore and try, and there's all this chaotic reaction to combat. You don't know that is a sure attack. Make you an enemy, you don't even know how much health numerically they have. We don't want you to actually do calculations in your mind. I'm doing 17 damage, he has 25 health, so I need to do 2 shots. You try and you see and you react to the situation.
Yeah,
and this is the beauty of it.
Yeah, and we, I think to that point, and someone was mentioning to call this out. There's a lot of feedback even in like the mercenaries barks. Like if you're trying to shoot with someone with a weapon at a distance that's probably not going to land, a lot of them are like, I don't know if I would do this, or like you get feedback to help you make that decision. And you also, and this is part of I think the fun of Jagged Alliance, is that you want to get to know your mercenaries. So you use them, you learn their accuracy with certain weapons as you go. There's information. It's not like you're working completely blind. There's different information that helps you make that choice, but you definitely learn how each mercenary works. Another thing that I want to hit on, and this is something that I've heard, and even came up, by the way, inside of our own teams. We talked about this internally, and it's something that a number of, and I think it was the right decision. We just said we can't do this, which is we couldn't have it as a toggle. And the reason why is because the way that balance and AI reactions are between knowing what chance to hit is and not is completely different. Like we saw directly people's usage of their turns and their AP were 100% different if they saw chance to hit versus not. Like Buyan said, there was a lot of players. Even if you didn't want to do it, and I think Cordonor said nailed this right in the head. Opinions always sound good on paper, but people often choose things which then are less fun to play but more efficient. And we saw no matter if you wanted to play with the fantasy of like the freedom of not having CTH, you still did it instinctively. And so the enemies had to be much more aggressive. The enemies had to also take very optimal hit chances and also pull back to be able to avoid it, because the player was always trying to play the optimal turn every turn in the 80 or 90% turn. They wouldn't waste their AP ever. And so the aggressiveness and the way we had to balance the AI was completely different. There was no way to blend or have two different versions of every single encounter for chance to hit and not chance to hit. Like the scale of that choice would have just been insurmountable. It'd be making two games. And so it sounds, it's just a UI element, but it's way more than just a UI element. It impacts every aspect of how you analyze and make a decision. And in the sense of puzzle versus feel, and we really wanted the feel aspect that Jagged Alliance has in 1 and 2, and that was a big reason we went with this. So
going midway is definitely something we've discussed, but it would have always felt worse off, at least for one group of people that were playing the game. Ultimately, the game would have been defined by one of the options, and the other would always feel off. And actually, I do have an example of this. We've done this in another game. Victor Vrine is one of our old action RPGs, one of our favorites here in the company, and it was designed for action control, so you're in direct control of your character, and you use more like a gamepad style combat. But it's a Diablo style game. People wanted the Diablo mouse clicking control scheme, and we added it. And then we started watching people play on streams even, and they were suffering because the game is designed to be played with the action control in mind, and people were suffering trying to go through encounters that they really couldn't go through because it requires the reaction speed of the different control scheme.
Yeah.
And ultimately would have come up with the same thing. People who are trying to play the numbers would have found the encounters much more dull, and definitely would have found it off.
Yeah. My personal take. I see the stream down. Okay, no, stream's up. My personal take is that I also feel like there's a lot of other. It's like menus available at a restaurant, right? There's a lot of other products out there that have that type of game experience, and it's a great experience. I like it. I think there's a lot of fun for that. I think the Jagged Alliance franchise and Jagged Alliance 3 specifically wants to have its own flavor, its own thing to offer, and we want to be good at offering that thing. So if we're trying to be a particular type of flavor and we try to blend in all this other stuff, we don't really get that uniqueness, and we can't make that uniqueness hopefully good. Now, have we done it as best as we can? I don't know. We'll see when you guys play it, and there's probably going to be ways that we're going to have to improve. Maybe there's too much information in some places. I saw someone commenting about the, like, okay, you're talking about this with a chance to hit, but you also show all this information about cover objects, which is also something we debated about. And we're only showing that because of the bullet penetration mechanics, because we didn't want players to have to interpret an animation to know what type of material they were behind and if a certain body part was covered by it or not. So there were some decisions we made there based on other systems to make it easy to understand, but not something that would take away from the decision making metric. So there's still obviously things that we're going to improve, and we'll support the game after it's launched. But I do think that it was something we needed to do for this particular franchise to be true to its legacy and to really bring it full forward. So thank you very much for listening to us talk about it again. We're going to talk about it more. I'm sure it's going to keep on coming up. It's fine. I'm hoping some people like clip these different segments so that they can, at least know what we're thinking, right or wrong. They know what we're thinking, and see that we're not. It wasn't a decision based. I saw one, and I'm not going to call out names. I saw one person saying that the reason why I removed it was a conspiracy, and we didn't have the development time to do blah blah blah. And I'm like, no, that is nothing. We did twice the development time to make sure it was the right decision. We tried it the wrong one way, and then we did it the other way, and it was a very informed experimental decision. So it's fine. Let's do Q&A for a little while. I'm also going to say the next dev stream I think is in a couple weeks. We're down to about every 2 weeks or so. So you'll see us in another few weeks. We are planning to do another t-shirt giveaway on the next stream. We'll post more information about that. Maybe we'll change the way we do the giveaway. There'll be a way to get into some of them through our social channels. If you haven't checked on social, we have social for for Twitter. You can follow the Teach Nordic channel. We have Discord. We have our awesome community site where everyone's debating and talking, and we're learning a lot from the conversations you're having. So please join in. But yeah, mark your calendars. I think it's in 2 weeks. We're gonna have our next stream, and we'll be doing a another giveaway there for those that want to earn one of these awesome t-shirts. I know we had 5 winners last time. Should be a lot of fun. So let's take 5 or 10 minutes and grab some questions. I have some already that I'm going to go back through, and then I'll grab some directly from the stream. And by the way, thanks everyone for attending. You've been an awesome audience today, and a lot of good comments and feedback. So really appreciate that. Let's see. Let me go through and get my document so I can read it here. Let's see. By the way, when I'm looking over, I have chat on this side, and I have my question stuff on this side, and I have Booyan here. So when I'm looking around, it's why my eyes are always going like this. I have like all this information I have to grab in order to do this whole fancy Nancy thing. So Cordonor asked an interesting question. So for action points, I think he or she meant this as a question. A fast character will also be able to shoot more often now because old games had a bit of a complicated system to calculate AP costs to shoot. That's a good one.
I know what he's talking about, yeah. So ultimately, one of the challenges of an action point system often is how to do a character that's mobile, but not that doesn't mean that he can do more shots, and the opposite way around. A character that can do a lot of shots, but he's not as mobile. Those things often require separation to create different feels of the characters. Actually, we have that in the game. The old games and maybe the XCOM games used to normalize action points costs for weapons. So all characters could fire 3 times basically with each weapon, but each character spent a different amount of action points. We actually tried that. It's a bit confusing because how much action points does it cost to fire a Kalashnikov? You don't know.
Yeah.
You can't give that number to a player. You can't compare 2 different assault rifles easily. What we did is the free move system, which allows characters to be more mobile and move more around the map, and that's something that we're gonna go in detail probably in the combat dev diary too. But ultimately, there are characters who are specifically more mobile and can move around a lot more than characters which are less mobile. It sometimes depends on equipment as well. If you get heavy armor and a heavy machine gun, you're basically losing your free movement. So it's based on this free movement mechanic we are using instead of the normalization that older games used for action points.
Yeah, I really like the free move mechanic. It's something that I take for granted, and yeah, we should definitely talk about that in the combat dev diary too. It's not obvious, I think, when until you're actually playing it yourself, even when you watch someone play it, because different characters have different free move ranges, and their weapon and equipment changes that too. So you get this idea of, oh, I need to, especially with some of the faster characters, you're like, I just added this new weapon. Now I know I can't move free as much as I did before. Maybe I need to, change that. So I really like the tone of that. The system works really well, as opposed to adding something that overcomplicates it with a
Yeah,
whole bunch of data you have to
and
make.
swapping weapons is also interesting because you have the quick swap weapon, so you can try
Absolutely.
changing weapons at the end of a turn to get to a handgun, which is more mobile and won't take away your free move, for example. So it's interesting, and specifically the melee build I'm playing is very focused on using
Oh
free move
yeah,
correctly. Because you can chain it with some perks that allow you to move quite a lot when you're attacking in melee. It's usually restoring your free move or getting extra free move, and
absolutely.
that's very interesting.
All right, let's see if I can grab a couple questions, and we'll do a little bit shorter answers, maybe, so we can get a few more in. So
Let's try.
Independent George, that's all good. We love talking about the game, so it's tough to be short when you're all excited about it. Independent George asked a good one that I can answer really quick, which is Independent George said, "Will we have the option of multiple squads in a sector again? Some of my favorite memories of Jagged Alliance 2 were the truly massive battles of Meduno.
I think it's Meduna, but I'm not sure. I never said it.
Never said it out loud. Absolutely, you can have multiple squads, and multiple squads can hit a battle at one time. So that's part of the equation. I don't know if we've talked about max character count, but I mean, you can get quite a few in there if you have multiple squads all participating, especially in boss or big encounters. So I don't know if it's the scale you're expecting, but there are definitely ways to have more than one squad engaged. And there's also a component here that may not be obvious in that one of the actions you can take in satellite view is to train militia, which are kind of NPC controlled allies. So you can have also a full squad as well as militia that are on your side fighting in a fight too, and that can add an extra layer of scale into some of those encounters. So there's different ways that those mechanics can stack into creating different sizes of engagements based on how you deal with those. There was two questions. I want to make sure I get the person's name right because this is one that's yes, there will be co-op. Yeah, there's definitely co-op. That's for Stevens. Is that your text is yellow? It's hard to read your name. Stephen Abled, sure. Yellow text is fun to read. So I think there's two more questions I want to grab. QB112011 said, how does weather affect chance to hit accuracy and damage? So we have both day-night cycles as well as different weather effects, including things like storms or dust storms or other things that can happen. And all of those affect a whole bunch of different things in combat, from weapon jam frequency to accuracy. Certain equipment may be differently usable or better in certain conditions. So the environments are very dynamic, and there's quite a bit that you have to think about when it comes to what weapons you're bringing and how you react to different weather effects. I don't know if you want to add a little bit more to that.
Yeah, ultimately there's a lot of different weather effects. It's their aim gameplay-wise is to set you up in a different situation and try something different in gameplay in combat. However, for the 99 cycle, you can actually even build up a team entirely trying to go through combats at night. You're gonna be more effective in stealth. You can use special gear to make sure that you hit better at night. There are perks like night vision, and there are equipment like night vision goggles. You can throw flares and light up enemies, so they're easier to hit, but you're harder to hit. So you can even use some of these environmental effects to your advantage and play around them. And
Yeah,
I'm sure that's gonna be something, again, part of Combat Dev Diary too. So
yeah, or maybe 3. We'll see. It's actually that's a really cool topic to talk about in 2 as well, because it was a system we kept on expanding to deal with that problem I was talking about earlier, which is how do we reduce the sameness of combat and having one strategy. So there's a lot of elements we've added in there that I think help keep that mix always changing. Yeah, I find everyone's surprised about co-op. It's on the Steam page. We're definitely doing co-op. You can play with friends. You can decide who controls which characters. There's obviously a lead person, but yeah, co-op's a lot of fun. I actually have enjoyed playing. My first co-op experience. I'm going to brag a little bit. My first co-op experience was with Ian Curry. So him and I played the game together. That was my first time. That was quite fun playing with him. So. Last question I'm gonna grab because I think this is a fun one, and then we're gonna call it. And I think Pavel is still in the background, so this one is he's famous for reacting to this one. Lysette said, "Jagged Alliance 2 is a really legendary tactics game. Were you guys nervous about making the sequel to such a beloved game?" I mean, the answer is yes. I think the answer is definitely nervous and excited. I know if you guys have seen that famous trailer, Pavel's like, "Don't fuck up," right? Like that was the big quote joke from that one video. I actually have in my bookshelf back here. You can't see it because of the green screen, but in my bookshelf back here, I have the Jagged Alliance 2 novel that was written a number of years ago, talking about the legacy of the Jagged Alliance franchise and how it impacted so many different things, and it was kind of required reading for the leadership of the team. It's something that we're very aware of. I think nervousness it's more humbled for me. You know, humbled to be able to touch such a franchise that people love so much. I don't really feel like there's ever a way to completely go back to a legacy of a game that's that pronounced. I think our goal is to do it justice. And are we gonna do that perfect? Who knows? Are you guys gonna love what we've done with it? I hope so. I'm not going to say that we're going to speak for your opinions, but I think that we definitely spent a lot of time thinking and talking about what that legacy meant and how we best embody that with our decisions that we make. And it's like, I know, Booyah, I'm going to put you on the spot. You talk about this all the time. You, for a long time, not way before even this game came into the mind, you play Jagged Alliance 2 every year.
I've played Jagged Alliance before I was a game designer, before actually even I started writing for computer magazines way back when. So it's a long time coming. I played I played every year, and it's a dream come true. We've always wanted to do Jagged Alliance, and you can even see tiny inspirations in different games that we did in the past, specifically Omerta, which is a small tactical game we did. Like a very tiny tactical game compared to what the production of our Jagged Alliance was, but you can see the unique characters and even the starting IMP type questionnaire at the start of the game to create your own character. It's something that has inspired us for quite a long time, and it's great to be able to just hopefully do it justice. We'll see what the people think.
I mean, game development is hard. We've definitely been on this project for a while, and it definitely was a project that got, with the graciousness of THQ Nordic, the extra time it needed to continue to mature. And we did a lot of focus testing, and we've done, we've really tried to give it its time. We're really eager for you to play it, and we hope that it's an experience you enjoy. I know I enjoy playing it, but you're the ones we're making it for. So all we can do is hope that you appreciate the heart and love we've poured into it. We'll see how that goes when it finally comes out. And yes, Brian Duke, the boss fight book. I bought my copy off of Amazon a while ago, I think, or maybe their website. I can't remember. Everyone, thank you so much for spending time with us today. I know we went long, so I appreciate Booyan's extra time, but there was a lot to talk about with combat. We were right, and everyone seemed eager for the information. So hope you guys have a great rest of your week. Booyan, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me, and great to talk to all of you guys.
Pavel and Simon in the background, thank you for all your work and help. And everyone else in the production team that helped makes all these streams possible. I know there's a lot of background stuff going on that makes this stuff work. We're all very grateful for your time. Oh, Pavel accidentally closed his stream, and now all the cameras are messed up. We'll just go to the B-roll cut while we deal with that. Thanks everyone very much. We will talk to you next time, and take care. Cheers. Bye.
Bye-bye.